I just finished one of the most incredible interviews I've done to date. I'm talking with Patrick Byrne, who was an intelligence asset for Obama, John Brennan, James Comey, and how they were trying to blackmail and manipulate Hillary Clinton, how they had to quickly cover up with the Russiagate hoax, how the elections are being rigged. It is fascinating. I'm asking you to please like and share this with friends. This was difficult to get. He was very open. He's spent $80 million proving this. And now we're starting to see stuff from Trump, Pam Bondi, and from Tulsi Gabbard because of him and other people that are bringing the truth to the White House. Please enjoy. All right, today I am joined by Patrick Byrne to talk about the 2020 election, in fact, many elections for the last 20 years, how the CIA, China, Venezuela, Iran, they're all attacking the United States, trying to rig our system. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, what an honor to be on your show with a good citizen of Harriman, Utah. I spent 20 years there looking out the window at Harriman.
Yeah, it's a good area. I like living in Utah. My audience will know this, but I recently reacted to an interview you did with Alex Jones where you laid out how you've spent close to $80 million tracking how the CIA, China, USAID, they've all been using our money against American citizens to rig elections. I want to just build on that and ask some questions and better understand things. But the first question I wanted to ask you was, from my past reading, you were one of the few people having these private meetings at the White House with President Trump about how his election was stolen. Many people went on to be sued. They got called in front of the J6 committee. They had their lives ruined. Why didn't they go after you? And what were you sharing with President Trump?
Well, I've written a book about that. It's called The Enemy Danger Close. General Flynn made it into a movie called The Enemy Within. You can see on Amazon Prime, where that scene in the White House is word for word. We acted out word for word what happened in that Oval Office. There's an actor, a younger and handsomer actor playing me. There's a lot of questions rolled into one. Why am I not touched? First, I have been sued. Dominion sued me. I think Coomer sued me. Some of the Smartmatic didn't, but the others did. I fought for the J6 committee to talk to me. They refused. I had to spend $50,000 in ads around Washington, D.C., taunting them, saying, look, I take all responsibility for J6. I'll come in under oath. I take all responsibility. You have me in. I'll tell you the story. It took shaming them for 18 months before they reluctantly agreed to meet me. And it's kind of funny when General Flynn, the hardest I've ever seen him laugh was the day after the January 6th committee started. Because if you remember the opening of that committee, there was at the opening, the Democrats each gave a little 10-minute speeches and Liz Cheney gave a 10-minute speech. Actually, the Democratic chairwoman gave a 10-minute speech and Liz Cheney did. And in Liz Cheney's speech, when she gets to the end of the speech, she says, she reaches the crescendo of the insurrection. And she says, and on the night of December 18th, 2020, the Oval Office was penetrated by General Michael Flynn, the lawyer Sidney Powell, and somebody else. And it was funny. Mike Flynn came in the next morning laughing and saying, why is it? They were afraid to mention your name. Why is it? And I said, well, sir, I'm kind of kryptonite to the deep state. If you'll listen to me. And I sat down. It was the first time I sat and was debriefed on my whole history that he went and stewed on it a few months. And then he came back 3 months later, the day after the Durham report was delivered. He called me, said, Patrick, your Republic's hanging by a thread. We've got one chance. We got to go public with your story. And so that's how it turned into, I wrote a book, which he made into a movie, but they're afraid to mention my name. They're afraid to mention my name. I know all the secrets. I worked for Brennan, Comey, and Obama. I was Obama. I was never thought I was ever going to say this in my life. But I've been actually nudged that I should. So I was working for them out of Utah. There were years that Overstock felt like a cover job, frankly. And I was so active for them. And they had, by I think 2011, Obama elevated me to something called a national intelligence asset. So I was taking the real ace in the hole situations, and I know a lot of secrets I'm not supposed to know. And that is why the bad guys, if they blow me up, if they prosecute me, whatever, it backfires on them. They cannot center me in any way. They can't even mention me. That's why they find these circumlocutions to get around even mentioning me. That's why the mainstream smart people notice this and get in contact, who say, given your prominence in all these events, Patrick, why do they write these stories in ways that they even avoid mentioning you? It's so weird. I say, yeah, they're all afraid to center me because they know at the bottom of all of this is this truth. This all started as a coup from Barack Obama against Hillary Clinton, Thanksgiving 2015, and I was let in on it. I was asked to take part. They made me think I was taking part in law enforcement. This isn't a theory. I took part. This was a coup from Barack Obama against Hillary Clinton. They had me bribe her so that Barack Obama could blackmail her. But I didn't understand why they were having me do what I was doing. And this was actually all run out of the deep state. Utah has more than its share. The Utah federal headquarters that's where the deep state moved when Trump first came into power. A whole bunch of them moved out to Utah. And so anyway, that's why they're afraid. They don't want to, they could, although I did hear in the last year of Biden that they would arrest me if I set foot in the US. I really stayed ashore more or less. I mean, I stayed abroad the last 2 years of Biden under the strong belief that I would have been arrested had I come ashore.
Okay.
I was doing a bunch of illegal things. There's no reason they couldn't.
Okay.
I had this DHS guy. I brought some people to a DHS guy in a foreign country, this very high level DHS guy who debriefed them for 3 days. At the end of 3 days, he said, me and my guys, we can't even sleep. This is the biggest crime in history, Byrne. But do you realize how illegal everything you're doing is? Do you have any idea? So anyway, I was actually thrown out of, anyway, I shouldn't, I go too far abroad. What else would you like to talk about?
Okay, so now you've prompted another question. We'll get to the election in a second. So okay, so you're this asset, this intelligence asset for Obama. What are your thoughts on all of this coming back into the news? They find these burn bags about Obama and Hillary Clinton, and do you think we're going to actually see justice on anybody?
Yes. I think that they're digging down like through some Roman village. They find the Etruscan foundations of it. The Etruscan foundations of all of that is this story that involved me. I'm glad that they're back to saying they have broken through the idea that the Russia hoax started in August of 2016 with Crossfire Hurricane. That's not when it started. That's when the paperwork shows that it started, but it started a full year before that, maybe even 15 months before that. So they're just now they've broken through the cover story, but they're digging all the way back. But at the end, you're going to find this all started as a coup from Barack Obama against Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump won in a fluke or whatever, surprised them. And so they switched to this Russian hoax. And I say this is the guy that had bribing Hillary and shagging Maria. So I know what I'm talking about. This was everything from Thanksgiving 2015 forward was a big, we've been living through a soft coup. And I know this because I was working for Brennan, Comey, and Obama. And I was in the middle of it until I figured out what was going on.
Why did he want to blackmail Hillary Clinton? Did he not want her to become president?
As it was said to me in early February of 2016, Patrick, Hillary is going to be president and nothing for 8 years, and nothing's going to stop that. But think of it this way. While she's president, think of there as being in the Department of Justice, a Bunsen burner, and the hand and the Bunsen burner. You remember your high school chemistry, a Bunsen burner, Steve?
Yes.
Your Bunsen burner has the information about the bribe on it. The hand on the Bunsen burner will be one of Barack Obama's people. And this way, if Hillary's a good girl and defends Obamacare, the flame stays low. If she's a bad girl and thinks for herself, it gets turned. This way, Barack Obama is going to manage Hillary Clinton for 8 years. Then she steps down and Michelle's going to run. And Patrick, that's the plan. So that was the plan. And so they needed, for that to work, they needed me to successfully get a bribe to her, which I managed. I arranged a bribe of $18 million for her, which she took in like January 15th of 2016. So that's really the backstory. This is all a Barack Obama coup. against Hillary Clinton. When Trump won, it all morphed into this Russian setup. Officially, it starts, I see now they're saying it starts December 7th, 2016, Barack Obama's involvement. That may be when they served the Russia hoax. It started in July of 2015. I think I can show it started in February of 2015. That's when they began baking the cake. They may have decided to serve the cake. They began serving it on December 17th, just 7th, 2016. But they'd been baking it since for about 18 months. No, they'd been baking it for almost 2 years by then.
Okay. Do you, one question before, do you believe Trump actually won 2024, or did they allow him to help cover up the 2020?
Neither. Trump did win 2024. He legitimately won it. And and their mechanism, they were going to steal it again, and their mechanism of stealing got neutralized. So I'm not saying anything more than that, but they have a mechanism. It turns out that they have a mechanism, and this is all stuff I've been laying more and more out over the last 2 or 3 years. There is in Serbia an office that is wired in that can enter all of this election stuff around the world. So really the backstory, let me come at this from a different direction. What really happened is a mafia came to power in Venezuela 26 years ago. It's called the Mafia of the Generalissimos. Only the way they say that obliquely is the Cartel de los Soles. The Soles is the suns. In Venezuela, the generals don't have stars. They have a sun on their shoulder. So the Cartel of the Suns, Cartel de los Soles, means the Mafia of the generals. They are the capos of the mafia. The president, Hugo Chavez, was the head of the mafia. And there's also 2 very smart people within it, a Hannibal Lecter type psychiatrist named Jorge Rodriguez and his sister, who's now vice president. And their importance comes in later. Anyway, this mafia took Venezuela, which has the largest oil reserves in the world. And so they wanted to steal 2 things. They nationalized the oil, the national oil company of Venezuela, PDVSA. They nationalized it. And then they have since looted $4 trillion, incidentally, while their own people starved. That mafia looted $4 trillion. The other thing they did was they stole the election system. Now, because if you're sitting on if you've just stolen the world's biggest gasoline station and you're pumping $4 trillion out over 25 years that you're pocketing, the other thing you need to make sure you got is the election system, so you never get dislodged. So they also stole the commission within government that runs Venezuelan elections. And this is a Fidel Castro clone. And he stole it, and they created an election system, a computerized election system. So the peasants of Venezuela would say, oh, computers, it must be fair and accurate. They don't know what a cyber vulnerability is. They computerized it, and they won all their elections from then on. They always win 51-49. They just win over and over, no matter what. Even though the polls show them down 80-20, they win 51-49. And they took that computerized election system, and they sent 3 Venezuelans to Boca Raton, Florida, where I happen to be at the moment, to Boca Raton, Florida, and they started a Delaware company called Smartmatic. They commercialized software developed by the Venezuelan mafia. And then that Smartmatic software, is fundamentally what's inside all the computerized election management systems, EMS, election management system. There's 3 major brands. I won't get you in trouble by naming them unless you want me to, but all those brands that that you've heard of them, the innards of their technology package is all Venezuelan. It's the Venezuelan mafia. And I can't wait till they're all going to be in prison before we get to court. They're all going to, I can't imagine, because I'm making all this public, that we've put together over the years. And anyway, but this is what's happened is, as crazy as all this sounds, finally the government has stepped in. Tulsi Gabbard, it was a very hot potato politically. Nobody wanted to touch this. Nobody had the backbone. Even when Trump came to power, DC didn't want to touch this. Even Trump's people, Tulsi Gabbard had the backbone. She stepped up. In April, she formed a director's study group, and they have absorbed not just our stuff, but there's hundreds of citizens groups around the country who for 4 years have been digging up all these different pieces of the puzzle. And Tulsi's special group assembled all these pieces. So the real credit goes to the citizens around the country who, they found that, Tulsi has come in with the heavy earth moving equipment and the bulldozers and stuff, but it was these citizens all over the country who never gave up, who kept digging, who surfaced these clues. And now they've confirmed, I think that they all understand the story I've just told you. I can't speak for them.
Did you know a dangerous amount of microplastics are now being found in our water, food, bloodstream, even our brains? These tiny plastic particles, often invisible to the naked eye, carry toxic chemicals like BPA that disrupt hormones, damage DNA, and inflame our organs. They affect everything from metabolism to fertility, and have even been linked to cancer, neurological disorders, autoimmune disease, and developmental issues in children. The worst part, there's no way to avoid exposure. It's everywhere. But there is a way to fight back, and it starts in your gut. Your gut is your first line of defense. A healthy microbiome can bind to and break down microplastic toxins before they poison your cells. But if your own gut is compromised, those toxins sneak right through, wreaking havoc on your immune system, energy levels, digestion, skin, even your brain. That's why we're healing our guts through kimchi. Now, kimchi restores the gut flora in your gut. Because in a world full of plastic, your gut needs to be bulletproof. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking on the link below, or you can use code Gardner to get 25% off your order. For an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore right now to get up to 50% off your order and free shipping. This stuff is great. It's been awesome for my gut, my bowels, my digestion, bowel movements. It's been awesome. And why save 25% when you can save up to 50% and get free shipping? Again, give them a call at 888-908-4425.
And I'm way away from that process, but General Flynn and I are close, and I know he's been on your show. I can tell you General Flynn came over to Europe. What happened was, as has happened before in my life, and I hope never again, whistleblowers started coming out of the woodwork, getting in touch with me, and from around the world who were part of stealing elections. And we eventually got a bunch of them together. And General Flynn came over and met with them last July, and they sat there and explained to him that they've been stealing elections for 20 years in 72 nations. And General Flynn was shocked. And the effort this time was neutralized. In 2024, it was neutralized. And that's the only reason Trump did not have, that's why there was not an F this time. See, it turns out at the end of the day, and I'll close this peroration on this note, at the end of the day, they have 15 different ways of cheating. They're really scholarly. They're like PhDs in poli-sci, these guys behind it. They look at every county in America, and they, based on its processes and laws and such, they pick from the first 14 ways of stealing. It's like A through N, I guess that would be, right? They for your county, they're going to look, they say, well, based on the procedures and practices, they're going to choose B, D, and K. But at the end of the day, so they're trying, I'm sitting at the end of the day, if they want CD-ROM to beat iPhone, they got these 14 different ways in your county of cheating. They get it as close as possible. Hopefully they in their eyes, they win through these on the ground ways that you've been hearing about the last 4 years. But at the end of the day, they have a 15th way, and that is Serbia. There is an office in Belgrade, Serbia, who turns out this was all architected around 20 years ago. Every election in the world is really being decided in Belgrade, Serbia on Huawei computers. And they decide if the candidate they wanted to win has pulled close at 7:01 and the precinct shuts down, but she hasn't won, they come on through a secret system into the back of the computers, which has a way they can do this, and they force whatever they need to force so that person wins. And they'll force it in a lot of places. If the race is closer, if somebody wins by 40.25% or more, there's no recount. But if they win by 50.25, but if it's 50.2%, there's an automatic recount. They'll even make things so that their candidate wins by 50.26%. So there's new, I mean, they have it down, and that's done out of on Chinese computers in Serbia. And we have all this. This isn't a theory. We have all the proof of everything. We have the people. We have the confessions. We have everything you could have. And if you want, we can then go to the last, most mind-blowing aspect of who's really behind this. But if you want me to stop there.
Yeah, no, I just, I've become friends with Jovan Hutton Pulitzer, who has also been tracking all this. I asked him, what question should I ask Patrick Byrne? And he said, ask him about Serbia. That was that was what he texted over to me. So, okay, let me pull up you're talking about the Doge.
Yeah, well, Alex got that a bit wrong. I didn't want to clarify him in front of his viewers, but Doge didn't make these reports. Doge surfaced the data. One of the great services Elon Musk gave us is he made it so citizens can go in and look at all this government data. So he did that. We had some researchers go in and they found this. It turns out that there is in Arlington, Virginia, an NGO called CEPS. There you see in the center, CEPPS. Stands for the Center. I should look this up or know it. It's the Center for Election Progress and Political Systems or something like that. It has been funded. Well, it has been staffed by the Open Society Foundation. Now, who's behind the Open Society Foundation? Does that name anything to you? That's
George Soros.
That's George Soros.
Okay.
That's George Soros. And it has been funded since July 2009 to the tune of billions of dollars by USAID. And we've also learned in the last 4 months, who was USAID a front for?
For me, the Democrat Party overtaking the border.
The CIA. It's all, it's a front for the CIA. It's so the billions from the CIA have gone into CEPS. The managers, the board of from George Soros, and their mission has been to help the world modernize their elections by installing Smartmatic equipment and Dominion, but primarily Smartmatic. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see on the right there are 26 nations that they have installed Smartmatic. We're spending billions of dollars. And every one of those nations, it's from the Philippines to Estonia to, Finland to Zambia it's all over the world. Everywhere they install these machines, nations have lurched left ever since. And this is, but there's always, so this is John Brennan and Barack Obama 6 months after they came into office. Once they learned, we don't know if that's when they learned about this. It looks like some CIA analysts stumbled over this Venezuelan system maybe a year or two earlier and reported it. But instead of doing the right thing, the CIA, John Brennan, made a deal with Venezuela and got this technology installed 26 nations and then flipped them left. Now there's another 46. There's a total of 72 nations. And I was with, as a General Flynn, when these people said directly to him, sir, we've been manipulating elections for 20 years in 72 nations. This is how the West looks like it's running off a cliff. The politicians doing this have not actually won free elections. Everything from all over Europe, these politicians who are, dropping the borders and letting 20 million people show up who hate Europe, things like that. That's all being done by politicians who are not actually winning elections. And and they've been working from the ground up for 20 years in our country. School boards, sheriffs, prosecutors, flipping everything against the Constitution, against the rule of law. They got to congressmen, senators. They got to the White House in 2020. But we got the institutions held and the citizens held more than the institutions held. The institutions really didn't do bubkiss, but the citizens held together for 4 years, and things got neutralized in 2024. It's the only reason we got through this.
Okay. Let me just use Pennsylvania as an example, because you said Trump didn't get effed. What I think you're referring to is Biden is going up or Trump's going up, and then suddenly there's this huge, and it looks like an F, right? So using Pennsylvania, for example, we go to bed, Trump's up hundreds of thousands of votes. We wake up the next day, he's lost to Biden. How is that possible? Even Pam Bondi during her confirmation hearing said, I'm not going to say the election wasn't stolen, because I haven't looked into it. But there's things in Pennsylvania, for example, that are very concerning to me.
Yes. Well, we know exactly how they do it. So believe it or not, when you go in and vote, I'm sorry, if you mail your ballot in, your ballot comes in and it gets fed into just a scanner. It's just an optical scanner like you have in any office. Now they dress it all up like it's this special ballot counting machine. It's a scanner, and it takes a digital image of your photograph, a digital image of your ballot. And then from then on, your piece of paper gets put away. That digital image becomes your ballot. And so now so what they actually do is at 7:01, they come in to the machine through a back door. And well, what's actually happening is they take every 100 digital ballots. Once they have 100 digital ballots in that scanner, a program counts them, creates a scorecard that kind of shows the results, how many votes did each candidate get. Then it compresses and seals that whole package up, and it transmits it to the county server. That's how it's supposed to work. What they have is either they can put a hidden script on the machine that there's like a 15-second pause while it waits, and then it translates. In that 15 seconds, it opens up that stack of 100. It actually edits the photographs. Recompresses them, and then transmits that. Or they can do it after the fact. They can do it after the fact from Serbia. And they actually go. So all this stuff about recounts never find it, because they'll show you recounts as if people are sitting there going through boxes of paper. That's not how recounts are done. People sit at screens, and they just get shown digital images of ballots, and they agree on where should the vote be given. But they're just going off digital images, which themselves can have been edited. And it's done, really, it can be done on an industrial scale out of Serbia. So there's this huge transmission. This part started 4 years ago, a huge transmission of the digital ballots on our systems gets transmitted to Serbia. There, the images are corrupted and swapped, then sent back and put back in the machine. So if somebody sits in and with the change votes, the change results, the phony results, if somebody sits there and say, I want to recount, I challenge these results, all they're taking that stack of digital images, opening them up, and people sit and look at them and say, no, everything matches. They're not taking out the paper, or they take out a box of paper and they show some people doing it just to put the photograph on the front page, but it's all done digitally. So everything, they have corrupted the system right back down to you can't even take the digital scanners results. You have to get the pieces of paper out. That's how they've done it. And they've done it along with a lot of lawfare, and they really studied how to overthrow our society. So like any lawyer who picked up a pen to try to work on any of this got disbarred and things like this. Yeah. And they have total information dominance. This was a communist revolution we just lived through, and we're the only nation that ever got through it.
Okay. Question. So on my show in the last couple of months, there was a story where China was sending hundreds of thousands of fake driver's licenses and pre-filled out ballots. I believe you were removed from Twitter, but I remember seeing a story where there was like a warehouse in Georgia where they were storing ballots, and the FBI destroyed everything. Can you tell me about that?
Close. There was somebody I was working with in Georgia, who had a whole bunch of, he was actually not a bounty hunter, a bail bondsman with 30,000 felons. So a guy like that has hundreds of private eyes and different people to work from. One of them was a young gal like that, out of that girl with a dragon tattoo with blue hair and facial piercings and stuff. She got dressed up as Antifa, and she just went into this warehouse where they were running the Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia election. And she just went in and went around and saw there were different stacks of blank ballots. And she took samples from different stacks. Now, all those ballots were supposed to be printed at the same shop, and she got samples, stole them, not of blank ballots, unused ballots from different samples, got them in her bag. We got them. That's where I was on January 1st, 2021. I was with a couple retired FBI forensic examiners specializing in paper forensics, and they examined it, and they said, here are the set of ballots. I forget the numbers, but this subset all come from the same batch and are, we can't tell you what's legitimate, not legitimate, but these 7 ballots were printed in the same print shop. These 2 ballots you brought us, they were printed somewhere else. They did not. Now, that should not be the case if these were all legitimate. In addition, this may have been, word started leaking out about this about December 28th, 29th. There's a voicemail that I've put up online of a Dominion executive calls a paper shredding company in town and says, send a truck over. We've got 3,000 pounds for you to pick up. And he gives his credit card. And that group comes over and they pick the stuff up in their truck. And it's one of these trucks that shreds. And the stuff is being shredded. The people I was working with got to that truck and stopped it mid-route, told them what they thought was going on, and had them go to, they found, I think somebody had bail bondsmen know a lot of people, so they found some mechanic shop that had an empty bay, and the truck went over and dumped out what was not shredded yet on the floor, and as well as all the shredded. And no, I guess it had all been shredded, but some of it had not been well shredded. But what they had shredded was not just normal shredding where you make a strip. They were doing a military grade confetti stripping where you're shredding like that. So you can't but they paid for the deluxe shredding. And there was a handbill, an invoice that had not been shredded that showed that it had come in that was for a box of a printing, something that had been printed in the Chinese printing shop. That was unshredded. That's right. Some things had stuck to the wall of the internal of the shredding confetti making machine. And when they stopped and emptied out, there were some things stuck that hadn't been shredded, including that. And the DHS was all up on this and cooperating with the DHS field agents. The FBI showed up and they took command of the whole scene. They took possession of everything. There was a fight between them and the DHS agents. I got a message up to the Oval Office, or I got somebody who could have given it to the Oval Office. But God, Trump is surrounded by a bunch of people that they're like throne sniffers. Or at least Trump won the first administration. And they were all more concerned about who got to talk to Trump and who's sitting closer to Trump. They're all like a bunch of French medieval, courtiers whose whole life is being in the court. And they're stupid. They're just thick. And you give them a piece of information like that should have gone right to the president, and he should have made a phone call to an agent on the ground, and this could have been stopped. Instead, you have these dumbs you got to work through. This whole thing could have been stopped in easily November and December 2020 if the people around Trump had been effective. They were horrible to work with, useless lawyers, starting with Rudy Giuliani, who was drunk every day at 10 a.m. And people wonder, what do you have against Rudy Giuliani that you say this? Well, I always loved Rudy. Rudy's drunk every day at 10 a.m. And I'm sitting there trying to explain the most complicated cyber crime in history. And he's got no interest in here, Anyway, but he's not the only one. There were all these people around Trump. Very few are even loyal to him. And they're just schemers. And you can't work through them. You can't get anything done through them. So anyway, but he could have stopped things then if he'd called this field agent. But you can't get... There's too many people in the way who don't have Trump's interest at heart. Anyway, but that all got under the FBI direction. They got the truck back. It all got swept up, put in the Trump, and the guy was told to finish the shredding and then burn everything by the FBI, by some FBI agents.
Wow. So they burned all that, just like they burned Thomas Matthew Crook's body, the person that tried to assassinate Trump.
Yeah.
Wow. Weird? That must be their go-to
method. Who do you think's behind that one?
I don't know. I mean, I was reading something just last night from Mike Benz, who was former cybersecurity, and he was just pointing out, like, there's no way that this was just a young kid with no digital footprint. He's got phone connections that are encrypted that the FBI can't get through. He's been doing target practice where cell phones are overlapping with FBI. I don't know. The whole thing is weird. But the fact that they're testifying, the Secret Service and the FBI are testifying that there's nothing to see here to Congress. Meanwhile, they're secretly burning the body. The whole thing makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, the most interesting aspect of that is there was a cell phone on the water tower, and somebody tracked afterwards that cell phone seems to have gotten on like a zip wire and gotten into the wood. Somebody got on a zip wire off the cell phone tower, probably shot the kid. I'm not sure the kid actually ever got any rounds off. Shot the kid, zip lines out, was picked up by a SUV and taken away. And that SUV is owned by the Department of Agriculture. And whoever was up on that water tower, his phone has been in the FBI field office in Pittsburgh a bunch of times, like 100 times. So yeah, that was an inside job. There may have been routed through Iran or something, but I think there were insiders. I think there were domestic elements. I think it's the same people we're fighting from the beginning. I think it's this is a Bolshevik revolution, and that was probably Brennan.
Okay.
Brennan or Obama, not Comey, but Brennan or Obama.
Okay.
Or George Star. Yeah.
But you think these people are going to be held accountable? Like the information that you are sharing with me, that's made it to Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, or at least President Trump?
Made it to Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay.
And she put together this very serious group that started hoovering back in April. Everything from all these wonderful citizens groups, as well as the different bad guys that had sort of gotten in touch with us and had all kinds of things to share. Everything got shared. And thank God, I can tell you that January, February, March, Uncle Sam, Trump was blocked. Trump did the right things. Trump gives the right orders, but you can't believe how the deep state thwarted him. He signed something, this has to be done immediately. And the deep state said, they accept the order, but then they block funding. They delay repositioning, allowing someone to reposition from here to here by 6 weeks. They stop any money moving in. They blocked him forever until Tulsi Gabbard finally stepped up. Nobody wanted, this was a very radioactive, not just a radioactive hot potato. She stepped up, formed a study group, and they've absorbed everything from all these citizens around the country. And, they've done their own. I don't mean to take any, the citizens get ultimately the credit, but it's more like the example I would use is, the Easter Island, we have those statues of the heads, 15-foot heads. It turns out there's like 40-foot bodies underneath some of them. Imagine a citizen saw this hillside, some citizens, and some hillside, there's no statues there, but something doesn't look right about it. Some bombs, and some citizens spend 4 years up there with teaspoons and little garden spades digging, and they get down to, the top of the head, the hand raised, something like that. And then they alert Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam comes in with the excavators and the bulldozers, and they, in 3 or 4 months, get done what those citizens couldn't get done in 400 years of digging with their teaspoons. And it's been wonderful to see. We're not trying to take any of the credit, those of us who were involved in this. It's been wonderful. They can get done in 2 days, but we could get done in 6 months of FOIA requests and fighting things in front of judges and stuff. They can get done in 2 days. So it's just, they've gotten to the bottom of everything. And again, I'm not involved with them. I'm a country mile from them, but I know a lot of the people that they've been demanding to talk to. And I think that their minds were blown and they know everything. There's been a big fight, to be honest. There's been a big fight. My understanding is this was all ready to be revealed by late June or early July. And the deep state has been fighting with Tulsi Gabbard to make this report less comprehensive. And she has finally refused. I mean, she refused. She's black and white. But the deep state wants them to say they found some vulnerabilities. The deep state doesn't want them to say elections have been hacked for 20 years. All these machines were compromised for 20 years. And in fact, we knew about this for 18 years. And in fact, we used it ourselves in 26 nations ourselves. And we've been doing it to flip the world left. They're just like the top of the CIA is in cahoots with China. They have this globalist vision and they've been flipping nations left, flipping nations globalist, let's say.
Okay.
It's hard to believe, but the CIA turns out to be behind 2020. They use the Chinese system. The Chinese they have this system I described. Venezuela's been at it for 20 years, but it's turning out to me that the CIA, I think there's very strong evidence now that it was the CIA pulling the strings on 2020 and not China.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I put out a poll to my audience. About 500,000 people responded. And the number one person that they say Trump's best pick was Tulsi Gabbard. I put like Marco Rubio, Tulsi, Pete Hegseth, and Kash Patel. And she came back. I think she's had tremendous courage. I look forward to seeing what comes of this. Final question. I appreciate, I know how valuable your time is. Newsmax just settled a $67 million lawsuit with Dominion. They're not saying they're guilty. They just want this to go away so they can move on. Your thoughts on that? And then what was the outcome of your lawsuit with Dominion?
My lawsuit is still pending. I can't get him in a courtroom. The judge won't let my lawyer be my lawyer. We're fighting it all the way to the Supreme Court. The judge, my lawyer Stephanie Lambert has become like the expert in this, the best lawyer in the country, knows all the details of all the 15 different ways of cheating. She's been with me for this ride. They want me to get another lawyer and I'm refusing. But why Newsmax did that on the day they did, they happened to do that on a day that like all hell's breaking loose on this in DC. Trump came out Monday morning or Tuesday morning and said, and did a long tweet or long thing about elections. And now he's mentioning it left, right, and center. That's not a coincidence. The avalanche has started. Newsmax held out all these years and then just now they surrendered. That's odd, but they made a mistake and they're incorrect. They were correct. Their reporting was correct the first time.
Interesting. Well, it says right in there that they're not admitting guilt. They just want this thing to go away. So anyway, we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, my feeling is there's a lot more going on that Trump is leaking out to the people and something big is coming. And I just, I'm trying to get it out to my audience. But, a lot of people are at this point, they're like, why are we still talking about Russia? Nothing's happened for 10 years, No,
he's done something. He sent 3 warships, a submarine, and 4,000 Marines to the north coast of Venezuela, and a $50 million bounty on your head as a president. And Marco Rubio is saying we don't even recognize this guy as the president. They're saying it's time for you to flee to Russia or we're invading. And so Trump's doing just what he should. This was an act of war by Cuba and Venezuela. There's no peace can be made with them. There's people surrounding Trump, trying to get Trump to make mineral deals for $4 billion. And forgive Venezuela. There can be no peace. They overthrew our republic. They've been doing dirty stuff for 20 years. They overthrew our republic 4 years ago, and Maduro has to leave. There can be no peace. We got to get rid of those regimes, that regime primarily, and then we can start. Then we can start talking about cleaning up at home as well.
Yeah, I'll just show this to my audience really quickly.
Can you close it? Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So this is just basically saying that Trump has sent 4,000 military, multiple warships to patrol the sea north of Venezuela. Venezuela says we're going to go to war. They're deploying. There's now a $50 million bounty on his head. So there's a lot in motion right now. Yeah. And
Venezuela can't make war. We could defeat Venezuela with the Salt Lake police force. Venezuela has a military. I've been there. It's entirely geared for suppressing the people. This is the military. There are groups of 2x2 female soldiers or national paramilitary, National Guard, who stand on every bridge. And they look, first of all, the military is only in the business of military and police only protect government installations. Your citizens are on your own. The women in groups stand on a bridge and they eye. And if any group of 3 people or more than 3 people get together, that's illegal. And they make a radio call, and somewhere this bus of 24 male goons shows up and beats people up or arrests them or something if they start to form any group. That's the military. They can't stand up. They're not geared to actually fight a real war. They can't fight our National Guard. They're not a serious military. It's a bunch of goons set up to just run a police state over the people. So they can easily be, they're nothing. they won't last an hour.
Okay.
If we decide to go to war.
Interesting. Well, Patrick, I know you're busy. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you've spent a lot of money, time, resource getting this out. I'm so grateful that Tulsi Gabbard and Trump are taking action. And I just ask my audience, be patient. None of this stuff moves overnight, but man, so much has happened just in the last couple of months. I think there's reason to be optimistic.
This week and last week and this week it has started. If you look closely, the things coming out of Trump's mouth, the things they've said, told something about Tulsi's delivered this report. There's things coming out of Trump's mouth. We got 3 warships off the coast of Venezuela. I see that the DOD released a photograph this morning of some SEALs going ashore somewhere in South America. This is all, it's not accidental. This is a language we are speaking to the government of our country is speaking to the government of Venezuela, and they have to leave. They have to leave. Their last election, they lost 80-20 and they just refused to leave.
Wow. All right. I'm going to put some direct links down below so people can follow you, check out your book, check out your website. Thank you for all that you do. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen. Please include the Twitter link. Thank you very much, Stephen.
I will. Thank you.